Welcome to MindSwitch Books. This is the place where we break down the wisdom from the world's most impactful books, all to help you make a real change.
So, what if? What if your biggest problems were actually your greatest advantages? I'm serious. What if every single thing that's ever frustrated you, every setback that's knocked you down, what if that held the secret to your biggest wins? Well, today, we are unlocking a powerful formula for doing just that. A philosophy used by Roman emperors, game-changing inventors, and some of the biggest CEOs today. We're diving headfirst into Ryan Holiday's modern Stoic masterpiece, The Obstacle is the Way. And it all starts with this one single, powerful idea from the Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius. This is really the core secret we're about to get into. And get this, he didn't write this for some big audience. He wrote it for himself in his private journal while he was literally leading armies on the front lines. It's a formula for thriving not just in spite of what happens, but because of it. So let's unpack how this ancient wisdom can become your modern superpower. You know that feeling, right? That feeling of being completely stuck, paralyzed. You've got these big goals, these dreams, but it feels like there's always something standing in the way. It's like this invisible wall that just boxes you in, and it leaves you feeling frustrated, anxious, maybe even a little angry. It's so easy to just list out all the things holding us back. And you know, the book breaks down these obstacles into a few different types. Some are huge, systemic things, right? Like a crazy economy or institutions that just aren't working. Then you've got the really personal stuff, our own fears, self-doubt, maybe inexperience, or even prejudice we have to deal with. And then there are the ones we build up in our own heads. The I'm too old, I'm too poor, I don't have the right connections, I'm not good enough. But here's the big question. What if there was a way to just flip all of that on its head?
Well, guess what? There is. And look, Ryan Holiday isn't just giving us a bunch of nice-sounding quotes or fuzzy optimism here. No way. He lays out a timeless three-step framework. It's a super practical philosophy that comes straight from the ancient Stoics, designed to systematically overcome and even benefit from these exact obstacles. It's basically a method for getting unstuck, for feeling empowered, and for just letting yourself go for it.
So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk through that exact framework. First, we'll cover the big idea. The obstacle becomes the way. Then we'll break down the three critical steps. Step 1 is all about mastering your perception. Step 2 is about taking the right action. And step 3 is building an unbreakable will. And at the end, we'll talk about how you can take all this and actually apply it to your own life. All right, let's dive into the first piece of the puzzle, mastering your perception. Seriously, this is the starting point for everything. The Stoics had this core belief that it's not what happens to us that causes problems, it's our judgment about what happens. Our perception, it's the lens through which we see and understand everything around us, and more importantly, what we decide it all means.
So what does the book mean by perception? Well, it's the discipline of seeing things as they actually are, not how our emotions or fears want us to see them. It's about stripping away that dramatic, subjective story we tell ourselves. Think about it like this. I lost my job. That's an objective fact. But my life is over because I lost my job. That is a subjective story. The whole point of mastering perception is to focus on the fact and not get swept away by that fear-driven narrative.
Okay, let me give you a great example of this in action. John D. Rockefeller. Long before he was an oil tycoon, he was just a young bookkeeper when the Panic of 1857 hit. And this was a massive financial crisis. While pretty much everyone else was freaking out, Rockefeller, he stayed completely calm. He made a choice. He chose to see all that chaos not as a disaster, but as an education, his greatest teacher. He learned that, the market is vicious, but a calm, rational mind could actually profit from that chaos. And that's such a critical insight, right? Your ability to stay objective when everyone else is losing their minds, that's a huge competitive advantage, no matter what you do.
There's this brilliant distinction from the 17th century samurai, Miyamoto Musashi, that just nails this point. He said we have two eyes, the observing eye, which is strong, and the perceiving eye, which is weak. The observing eye, it just sees what's actually there. Simple. But the perceiving eye, that's the weak one. It sees insurmountable obstacles. It gets all clouded up with emotion and drama. So the real key to mastering perception is to rely on that strong observing eye, to see the event for what it is, not the crazy story we're trying to attach to it.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Once you realize that, you'll find incredible strength. I mean, just look at Reuben Hurricane Carter. Here's a top boxer, wrongly convicted of murder, and he spends 19 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
But from day one, he told the warden, "I will not be treated like a prisoner." He refused to wear the uniform, refused to go to parole hearings, he just refused to break. He chose to see his time in prison not as a punishment, but as an opportunity to study law and philosophy, to work on his own case, and to completely transform himself. They might have had his body locked up, but they never ever had his mind. And that power, that's available to every single one of us.
Okay, we're about to jump into the second step, which is all about action. But real quick, before we do, if you're getting some value out of this framework, could you do us a huge favor? Help us spread this wisdom by hitting that like button and maybe sharing this with someone who's facing their own obstacle right now. It really helps the channel out. And hey, it might just be the thing that changes their perspective.
All right, so we've talked about how to see things clearly. Now let's talk about how to act. And that brings us to step 2, taking the right action. See, once you've managed to perceive a situation calmly and clearly, you have to move. But not just any action will do. The real solution to our problems is in deliberate, directed, and yeah, courageous action. Right action isn't just, running around like a headless chicken. It's about being pragmatic and persistent. It's about looking at that big, scary obstacle, breaking it down into smaller, manageable pieces, and then attacking those pieces one by one with creativity and discipline. So often, we know what our problems are, right? But we get stuck in analyzing everything to death, or just stuck in fear. Right action is the cure for that paralysis. A perfect, and I mean perfect example of this is this guy, Demosthenes from ancient Greece. This kid was born sickly, had a terrible speech impediment, and then got cheated out of his inheritance. I mean, he had every excuse in the book to just give up, but he didn't. Instead, he took massive action. To fix his stutter, he literally filled his mouth with pebbles and practiced speaking into the wind. To build up his lung capacity, he'd recite speeches while running up hills. He took all of his disadvantages, all of his rage, and turned it into fuel. And he ended up becoming the greatest speaker in all of Athens and won his inheritance back in court. When someone asked him what the most important part of public speaking was, his answer was simple: action. Action, action. So how do we actually do this? Well, the book lays out a clear method. First, just start. Start anywhere. Amelia Earhart, for example, took a totally insulting, unpaid offer just to get her foot in the door of aviation. Second, attack the problem. Don't wait for it to solve itself. Ulysses S. Grant failed over and over again trying to take the city of Vicksburg, but he just kept chiseling away, trying new things, until finally the fortress cracked. And in doing so, he found a whole new strategy that helped win the war. And finally, you have to iterate and learn. Thomas Edison, right? The guy tested something like 6,000 different filaments for the light bulb. For him, failure wasn't a bad thing, it was a feature of the process. It was just another way of learning what didn't work. Okay, so you've got your perception in check, and you're taking action. But what happens when you've done everything you possibly can, and things are still tough? What about the stuff you just truly can't change? Well, that brings us to the third and final discipline, building an unbreakable will. This is all about your inner strength. It's that power to endure and to persist, no matter what life throws at you. The Stoics had a cool name for this. They called it our inner citadel. It's like this fortress inside you that no outside event can ever break into. Think about it this way. Someone can take away your job, sure, but they can't take away your work ethic. That's your inner citadel. The will is what lets us accept the things we can't control while fiercely protecting the things we can.
Now, the book goes way deeper into how to build this will. But one really key practice is what they call anticipation. The Stoics would actually make themselves think about the worst-case scenarios, not to be all doom and gloom, but to be prepared. See, by thinking about what could go wrong before it happens, you take away its power to shock you and knock you off course. And that, plus other things like learning to love your fate, they called it amor fati, a love of fate, and connecting to a bigger purpose, that's how you build an unbreakable will. It's kind of like the ultimate insurance policy for your soul.
All right, so we've walked through the big three: perception, action, and will. Now, let's pull it all together and talk about how this becomes your actual path forward. Because this isn't just some interesting philosophy to think about. It's a practical guide for your life starting right now. So the whole thing boils down to this simple, but definitely not easy, three-step process. First, you've got to manage your perception. That means seeing things objectively for what they really are. Second, you have to direct your action. Focus on what you can actually control and move forward with purpose and creativity. And third, you need to cultivate your will. That means accepting and enduring what's beyond your control with some grace and resilience. That's the whole framework right there. See it right, act right, and endure.
And that brings us to the final and, honestly, the most important question of all. I want you to take a second and really think about this. What is the biggest obstacle in your life right now? Is it a frustrating boss? A financial mess? Some deep-seated personal fear? Whatever it is, what if it's not a roadblock at all? What if it's actually your path forward, just waiting for you to start walking?
Look, everything we've talked about today, it's really just a glimpse. It's a taste of the incredible wisdom that is packed into this book. Mastering this art of turning your struggles into your strengths, that's a lifelong journey. And honestly, this book is the ultimate roadmap for it. Thank you so much for sticking with us and taking this deep dive.
So if you're ready to keep going on that journey, your next step is super simple. First, make sure you subscribe to MindSwitch Books for more explainers just like this one that are designed to empower you with life-changing ideas. And, most importantly, click that link down in the description and get your own copy of The Obstacle is the Way. Honestly, reading it for yourself is the very first action you can take to make this philosophy your reality. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.